Hello, I'm Iain Macintosh and welcome to Route 1, your concise yet comprehensive thrice-a-week show. It's football fast, no faff, so without any further ado, let's go Route 1 in association with Fitzdares. Well, we got there eventually. Spiked on Monday because of Manchester United. I did worry a little bit at half-time that we wouldn't ever get round to discussing West Ham, but they get the full blast of our Sauron's eye today because they let that single goal lead slip and they lost 2-1 to Nottingham Forest, and they are now 7 points adrift in the relegation zone. Now, in truth, this was far from their worst performance of the season. They made some chances. They had some moments. They briefly thought they were 2-0 up, and I did actually start writing about Forest. But then Sean Dyche's side came back and secured a hugely important victory, which means West Ham are in big trouble. And I put it to you, dear viewer, that it is trouble entirely of their own making. Want some trouble numbers? Want me to prove my point? Oh, I'll do it. I'll prove my point, all right, because these numbers are bloody awful. They've only won 3 games all season. They haven't won in 10. They're 16th for XG. They're 19th for XGA. They have conceded 43 goals already, the most in the Premier League. They've shipped 12 goals from set pieces alone. And last Saturday, against one of the worst teams the Premier League has ever seen, they didn't even manage a single shot on target. Now, regular listeners, regular viewers, you will know we've been beating this drum since the summer. So let no man, woman nor child stand against us now. West Ham are shoulders deep in the brown stuff. But who's to blame? Well, I don't think it's the manager. Now, granted, he's flickered between 5 different formations already this season, according to the data site FB Ref, and he has occasionally deployed players in surprising positions. But Nuno Espirito Santo has been parachuted into this dumpster fire without the benefit of a pre-season or a transfer window. Not that West Ham tend to excel in these situations. There is a saying in football and in business that to stand still is to go backwards. And that's a charge that's been levelled at West Ham. But I would argue that in the last 18 months, the Hammers haven't stood still. They have actually just gone backwards. They are, quite simply, a much worse football team than they used to be. And you can't get away with that. Look at the standard of the Premier League now. Bournemouth haven't won since October, and honestly, probably only 2 or 3 West Ham players would get in their first 11. Brighton and Brentford are in the top half of the table playing 4D chess in the transfer market, while West Ham are chewing Duplo bricks and dribbling on their own socks. And this is the most remarkable aspect of this story. It's not down to the owners being tight-fisted, because over the past 4 seasons, the Hammers have spent about £550 million, while bringing in 285. But the spending is weird. Last season, they dropped 25 million on the then 31-year-old German target man Niklas Füllkrug. Who spends 25 million on a 31-year-old? He scored 3 goals in 26 appearances and is now going on loan with AC Milan. They spent about £20 million on Louis Gilherm, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, because I've barely seen him. The boy played just 275 minutes in 18 months. Now he's off to Sporting Lisbon at a £5 million loss. They spent £30 million on James Ward-Prowse, the FM22 set-piece machine. Nuno rates him so highly, he's literally never appeared on a team sheet for West Ham since he took over. And herein lies the issue. This West Ham team isn't a team. It's like a cross-section of the earth. You can see all the different layers from all the different managers. Boy, are they different managers. They've lurched from the attritional achievements of David Moyes to whatever the hell Julian Lopetegui was, to the considered possession of Graham Potter, to the deep-lying counter-attacking of Nuno. And because of that and the similar turnover of sporting directors, this is just a random grab bag of footballers. There's no balance, there's no ideology, there's no plan. And I don't think sacking Nuno and bringing in a third manager of the season is really going to solve this. I honestly think West Ham need a branding session as much as anything else, because I don't know what they are right now. Once they decide on their identity, well, they can buy players for that identity, they can coach to that identity, but the time to do all of that was when David Moyes left. And while we're on David Moyes, I actually don't blame the supporters for effectively forcing his departure. If you're paying £1,000 or more for a season ticket and you're finding it a miserable experience, you've paid for the right to an opinion, and it shouldn't prove impossible for a club like West Ham, with their Premier League status, their attractive and lucrative London location, their government-purchased super stadium, and their illustrious history, to just, recruit an appropriate manager. 10 wins will generally keep a team in the Premier League, on the basis that any team capable of winning 10 times will probably draw a fair few as well. West Ham have won 3. So they have 17 games to find another 7. Now, 7 wins in the first 17 games of this season would have put them between 6th and 8th. So yeah, in order to survive, West Ham have to miraculously discover Europa League qualifying form. Reinforcements have arrived. Tati Castellanos made his debut last night after signing from Lazio. He spurned 3 chances at an XG of 0.52. Portuguese striker Pablo Felipe arrived from the bench. He lashed one over the bar from close range. Felipe's agent, by the way, is one Jorge Mendes, who is also Nuno's agent. And coincidences like that always worry me. Well, Benji Lanyado is a regular on the Totally Football Show, and he's a long-suffering West Ham supporter. Benji, who's to blame for all of this?
I think a lot of people are to blame for this. I mean, the most obvious place to start is the board and the owners. Throughout all of the ups and downs of the last sort of 10 years and the ins and outs of managers and players, they are the one thing that's been consistent. Their inability to sort of find any kind of guiding thread in our strategy, in our recruitment, in our football, is really obvious now. As you've said, we've kind of lurched from one style of football to another, one style of manager to another, and it's never felt like there's any kind of clear, coherent plan. At the same time, I think that a massive backdrop here is the stadium move and the kind of malaise and the ennui that has sort of come with it. But I would say it was maybe an impossible deal to turn down at the time. I think if they hadn't chosen to move to the stadium, they would have been known as the owners who missed the biggest open goal in football history. I think the fans deserve a bit of blame for, gradually ganging up on David Moyes and deciding that he wasn't quite good enough or his style wasn't quite sexy or fun enough for West Ham. And ultimately, you've also got to blame the players a bit here. They are good players who are not performing to the level that we need. We also have shown very clearly that we're entirely willing to sell our best players fairly quickly. We sold Rice when we absolutely could have held on for another season, like Forest did with Gibbs White, or Palace have done with Mark Guehi. We couldn't quite get the best out of Kudus, and again decided to sell as soon as a half-decent bid came in. So yeah, I think you can sprinkle the blame in multiple directions, but ultimately I think it's got to fall at the feet of the owners, at David Sullivan and Karen Brady. I think a lot of this can be reshaped in their absence, and I think hopefully they will choose a time sooner rather than later to sell up.
Benji is the CEO of Pickfair, a fantastic business that allows you to build your own online photography gallery and sell the pictures as prints and downloads. Check them out in the episode description. West Bromwich Albion have sacked their manager Ryan Mason after a dismal campaign that saw them lose 10 away games on the spin and slide down the table to 18th. Now, if you watched their latest defeat on Monday night to Leicester, you'll know it was a really unfortunate result. But this decision, I fear, is about the season as a whole, because there were expectations this year. West Bromwich Albion are one of the biggest football clubs in the Championship. They have one of the most loyal fan bases, but they have been marooned in the second flight for 4.5 seasons. And they look more like getting relegated into the third right now than getting promoted into the first. But hey, first some context. The Baggies have been boinging their way between the top 2 divisions for some time now. Between 2002 and 2021, they were promoted 5 times and relegated 5 times. Throughout that period, and up to and including now, the only season their average attendance dropped below 20,000 was in COVID. Well, I think they had a decent excuse. So where did the trouble start? Well, with an ownership change, of course. From 2002 to 2016, the club was in the hands of a particularly shrewd operator, Jeremy Peace. But he was evidently just shrewd enough to realise he'd taken the club as far as he could, and it was time to get out while the getting was good. He sold to a Chinese investment group for around £200 million. The Baggies survived just a single season, and they went down in 2018 in a classic 3-manager campaign. Can you name those 3 managers? We'll pick up on that in a minute. Slaven Bilic took them back up in 2020, but they were ill-equipped for the Premier League and won just a single game before Christmas. Bilic was fired, in came Sam Allardyce, but to no avail. Down they went, and down they stayed. But in February of last year, amid sustained protests against the aforementioned Chinese ownership, the club was sold again, this time to the American entrepreneur Shilan Patel. But of course, it is all a bit different now. There are no parachute payments. Annual pre-tax losses had risen to nearly £34 million in 2024, and last season they could only finish ninth. Well, this season, under the respected but untested Mason, they're kind of supposed to kick on, but kick on they have not. Chris Lepkowski knows this club better than most. He's covered them as a journalist for the Birmingham Post and Mail. He's worked for them as communications manager. Chris, what went wrong here? How much was down to Ryan Mason and how much was down to what we should diplomatically refer to as historic issues?
Well, West Bromwich Albion, where to start really? I think really Ryan Mason was the wrong appointment. Andrew Nestor spoke about data-driven recruitment. Well, he took on a guy who'd never been manager before, only interim. This is his third appointment, Nestor, because he did try to bring in Rafael Vicky before the failed appointment of Mowbray and now this failed appointment. So there'll be a lot of heat on him. I think Mason's tactics really and the way he went about things got worse and worse during the season. Some of the substitutions were baffling. He created a goalkeeping crisis by dropping a young and impressionable goalkeeper who'd had a few shaky games but also had some good games, and drafted in a deputy who was nowhere near that standard and ended up having to revert back to the initial goalkeeper he dropped in that final game. The strange thing is, in that final game, Albion it looked like Mason had finally settled on his best 11, and that was the first time they'd all played together. That's the irony of it all. But there's no doubt that the backdrop really of the club's issues, financial issues, were a big hindrance. In the last 4 windows, they've lost a big hitter, at least one big hitter, to try and ease the PSR troubles. That 3-year cycle of PSR problems should end or will end this summer. So as long as, and this is, by the way, a legacy of Gukshan Lai, not the current ownership. The current ownership have done outstandingly well to try and maintain the club within the parameters. But from this summer onwards, the club should be in better shape. It should be in better nick. It's just a case of making sure that whoever comes in now is the right manager to keep them in the Championship and hopefully grow the club into a better place and beyond next season.
Chris has got a new book out. It's called Slum Sport. It's a story of the 1985-86 season, and it's excellent. Find the link in the episode description. He's also the co-host of the West Brom podcast, The Liquidator, and we've linked to that too. Oh, and those managers, Tony Pulis, Alan Pardew and Darren Moore. 3 imaginary points to you if you got them. That was Route 1. It was Football Fast, No Faff, and it's here thrice a week, Monday, Wednesday and Friday. I've been Iain Macintosh. Your producer was Helena Fremantle. We'll be back on Friday, and we'll see you then.